Hello and welcome to another An Old Man Watches, and today we're talking about The Little Shop of Horrors from 1960, which is a different movie to the 1986 Little Shop of Horrors. This obviously was the original progenitor via a musical theatre adaptation. So this movie generated a stage show musical, and the stage show musical was then filmed in 1986. So basically, the plot of this is that as the put-upon assistant of penny-pinching florist Grubbish Mushnick, which is a great name, the only bright spark in Seymour Krelborn's life is his kind and attractive, surprise, surprise, co-worker Audrey. Seymour is something of a clumsy fellow, and his misadventures have him on the verge of losing his job, when, in desperation, he brings his boss a strange little plant he's been growing, rather a sickly-looking thing, which he has named Audrey Jr., to the real Audrey's delight. Mushnick is not much impressed by the sickly-looking plant, but he says to Seymour, "You've got a week to for it to recover and show that it can bring in customers, because it is unusual." And for 6 days, Seymour tries to tend the plant back to health without any effect. No matter of fertilizer or plant food seems to work. But then he accidentally pricks his finger, the blood drips onto Audrey Jr., and, well, wouldn't you know, the plant starts to revive. Now kept healthy by a steady stream of Seymour's blood, Audrey Jr. grows healthy and strong, and the strange-looking plant brings customers flocking to buy flowers from the store. The only problem is that as Audrey Jr. grows larger, it gets hungrier and hungrier, and Seymour's become anemic from loss of blood. How is he going to keep Audrey Jr. fed? Well, I bet you can guess, right? So that's the plot. Basically, that's the premise of the movie. So what's going on with this film? Before you continue any further, if you haven't watched my video on A Bucket of Blood, I suggest you check that out before continuing this one, because it's going to be really relevant to the conversation. So what does The Little Shop of Horrors have going on? What's interesting about it? Well, number one, this may be the most Corman-y movie that ever Cormaned. So at the end of producing A Bucket of Blood, Roger Corman still had temporary access to the sets of the film. And he's like, I've got 2 more days with these sets. I should make another movie with them, because they're not going to cost me any money. And so he went to writer Charles B. Griffith, and he said, "Hey, Chuck, I've got 2 days and a bunch of sets. Can you write a script that can be filmed in that time that uses them?" And he and Charles Griffith, they discussed it. They considered and discarded several different plot ideas, while self-admittedly enjoying a considerable number of drinks, until deep in his cups, Griffith said, "How about a man-eating plant?" And so that's what they did, reusing the sets from A Bucket of Blood, Griffith's new script, and recycling a bunch of actors from the earlier production as well, because those guys were still around. They were jobbing actors. They went where the work was, and there was work to be had. So, yeah, this film was filmed in 2 days, using recycled sets and cast members, basically. The second thing about The Little Shop of Horrors is it's not only filmed on sets from A Bucket of Blood, using many of the same cast, but it probably fits the title A Bucket of Blood better than A Bucket of Blood did, and B, owes a considerable plot debt to it. So you've got the same downtrodden social outcast who moons over a girl, though in this movie his interest is at least initially welcomed, unlike in A Bucket of Blood. But you've also got the same more or less accidental discovery of something that will make him popular and successful at last. You've got the same kind of accidental or desperate violence that leads to greater success, the same mentor figure who discovers the grisly secret but whose greed stops him from saying anything, and the same escalation of more and more intentional violence before the protagonist is ultimately undone by his own creation. Like, the basic beats of the plot are largely the same. What is different is that, this movie is kind of zanier and more over the top, because you've got, an evil talking plant at the center of it. Which brings me to my last point, which is the question of zany versus good. So I'll start off by saying The Little Shop of Horrors is a decent enough little movie, which is an amazing achievement given its production constraints. Hey, can you write me a script I can film in 2 days using a predefined set of sets? I mean, that it's watchable at all is an impressive achievement, and that it's actually reasonably entertaining. But at the end of the day, it's a zanier, more over-the-top retread of A Bucket of Blood. And A Bucket of Blood is a better film. The script's a little bit tighter, and it hangs together just that little bit better, I feel like. But A Bucket of Blood is not the movie that's remembered. Now, of course, The Little Shop of Horrors is mostly actually remembered through the 1986 Little Shop of Horrors movies. Little Shop of Horrors movie, with Rick Moranis and Steve Martin, amongst others. But that movie only got made because somebody made a theatre musical adaptation of this one. So, this movie had enough kind of memorability to it. And I think that's the important thing. Like, the zaniness of this film is memorable. So A Bucket of Blood is a better film, but it's not an amazing film. And this film is kind of much more memorable because of its zaniness. So, I guess, as long as you can make a tolerably good film, if you can make it memorable enough, it's gonna hit a zeitgeist. It's gonna have some cultural footprint. Certainly, The Little Shop of Horrors has a much larger cultural footprint than A Bucket of Blood does. It's much better remembered, and so it's an interesting factor about the film to me is what it tells us about how we engage with story. A decent enough movie that is memorably bizarre is going to stick with us better than a slightly better movie that's not anywhere near as bizarre. That says something about people, I guess. What it is, I'll leave for you to decide. So that is The Little Shop of Horrors. I think it's worth having a look at, particularly if you were at all a fan of the 86 film. I would say, if you do check it out, try and find time to watch A Bucket of Blood as well, because this is very much a retread of that movie, just more over the top. Speaking of over the top, next time I'm going to talk about Twister's Revenge, which is about a sentient monster truck. The 80s were a weird time, weren't they? So that'll be next time. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed it.